Sometimes, the most brutal betrayal isn't the one that screams, it's the one that whispers with your voice. I used to think she was just tired. You know, the way she'd stop looking me in the eyes, her lips always dry, hands cold. Then I found the box. Small, wrapped in an old sweater, hidden deep in her suitcase. And suddenly, everything made sense. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was finding out why. My name is Daniel, and I swear I thought I was building a life with her. It wasn't fireworks at first, not even close. The first time I met Lena, she actually cut in front of me in line at a bookstore. She didn't say sorry, just looked at me like I was invisible. But something about her, I don't know, it stuck. A few days later, we crossed paths again at a mutual friend's party, and she smiled like she remembered me. That smile? It rewrote something inside me. We started talking. Talking turned into texting all night. Then sleepovers. Then shared groceries. Then rent. Before I knew it, she was everywhere, her shampoo in my shower, her clothes on my floor, her laughter in my walls. I fell hard. And it wasn't just love, it was like I finally exhaled. Like I had been holding my breath for years and didn't even know it. But here's the thing. There were moments, small, fleeting, where something in her eyes didn't match her words. Like when I said, "I love you," and she'd smile, but it wouldn't quite reach her eyes. Or when I'd talk about the future, and she'd quietly change the subject. I told myself it was just her way, she wasn't a planner, she liked living in the moment. But the truth is, Lena always knew something I didn't. She used to call me solid. Said I grounded her. But now I wonder if that was just her way of saying I was easy to lie to. A safe place to hide. The night things started to unravel wasn't loud or dramatic. We were watching some documentary, I don't even remember what it was. She was curled up beside me, feet tucked under my legs. At one point, she got up to grab water, and her phone buzzed. She never locked it. Ever. I didn't mean to look. I swear. But the name that popped up, it made my stomach clench. Just a letter. But it felt loaded. Like a bullet with no gun. And then the texts lit up the screen. You made me feel alive again. When can I see you without sneaking? I froze. Like, completely froze. My hands started shaking, my mouth went dry, and I felt stupid. Just stupid. I'd bought her groceries that morning. I'd folded her laundry while she napped. I was loving her, fully, openly, while she was crafting some secret version of herself for someone else. I didn't say anything that night. Not a word. She came back, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted tea. And I just nodded. Because I wasn't ready to lose her. Because I needed to know more. Because maybe, deep down, I still wanted to be wrong. The next morning, I watched her sleep. I don't know why, but I wanted to see if her face would change, like if guilt could leak through in the early hours before she put her mask on. She looked peaceful. Innocent, even. And that messed me up more than I expected. I got up quietly, made us both coffee like usual, and tried to breathe through the static in my chest. She came into the kitchen wrapped in my hoodie, hair a mess, smiling like nothing had cracked open the night before. And I smiled back. Because that's what you do when you're not ready to bleed yet. That whole day, I acted normal. Too normal. I think she even noticed because she kissed me more than usual, asked me weird questions like, "You okay? You seem quiet." And I said yeah. Always yeah. What else could I say? But something shifted. Now that I knew, or at least suspected, I couldn't unsee things. The little changes I'd brushed off before were suddenly loud as hell. Like the way she used to leave her phone anywhere and now it was always face down. Or how she'd suddenly start taking long showers before bed, then come out smelling like a different soap. One I didn't buy. And there were new clothes. Not flashy or obvious, subtle things. A different style of bra. A new lipstick she said she hated but somehow wore 3 days in a row. Once, she wore perfume before going to the grocery store. And when I teased her about it, she just shrugged and said, "Self-care." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. At night, she still curled into me. Still touched my face like I mattered. But now I'd lie there, wondering if she was imagining someone else when she did it. If I was just her habit, safe, predictable, invisible in the worst way. I started checking her phone when she showered. I hate that. I hated that. But I needed truth more than I needed pride. A turned out to be Adrian. No last name. No saved photos. Just message after message, sweet, aching little things that made my stomach twist. I dreamt about you again. You smell like something dangerous. You make me feel real. And then one that made me sit down on the edge of the bed like I'd been punched in the chest. I wish I met you before him. I stared at that for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it made something inside me snap clean in half. I wasn't angry. Not yet. That came later. Right then, I just felt erased. Like everything I gave her, all the stupid love and care and patience, was just background noise to a story she was telling someone else. I deleted nothing. I didn't even touch the screen. Just left it exactly how I found it. Because I knew she'd notice if I didn't. And I wasn't ready for confrontation. Not yet. I needed to understand how deep this thing went. And I needed to figure out who the hell Adrian really was, and what he meant to her that I didn't. Because if I was gonna lose everything, I wanted the truth to burn. I knew I had to be smart about it. Not just reactive, not desperate. I had to make her believe everything was still okay, that I was still that safe place she could fall into, even if she was using me like a shield. So I started asking questions. Casual ones, layered in warmth. Like, "Hey, whatever happened to that old friend from college you used to mention?" Or, "How's work been lately? You seem busy." And she answered with ease. Too much ease. That kind of fluency that only comes when the lie has been practiced. But she slipped once. Just once. And that's all it took. She was brushing her hair in the mirror, humming something under her breath, when I walked in and said, "Did you see the email about our lease renewal?" She didn't even look up. Just said, "I'm not sure I want to sign for another year." Just like that. No warning. No softness. Like it was a calendar event she forgot to mention. I froze. "What do you mean?" She paused, blinked at her reflection, then said, "I don't know. I've just been feeling unsettled. Like maybe I need something different." But I didn't press her. I just nodded, kissed the top of her head, and told her we could talk about it later. Later, I waited until she fell asleep, then pulled her old laptop out of the drawer. She barely used it anymore, everything she did was on her phone. But I had a feeling. You know that gut-twisting feeling when something's hiding in plain sight? It was there. In the downloads folder. A zip file labeled A+L_moments. I opened it slowly, heart pounding like I'd swallowed a drum. Inside were dozens of photos. Some were just her, selfies, mirror shots, candids. But some, they were taken by someone else. From across the table at a cafe. Her laughing in the passenger seat of a car I didn't recognize. Her in a hotel bathroom, robe sliding off one shoulder, holding a wine glass and biting her lip. She never bit her lip like that for me. But the worst was a video. Just a few seconds long. It was her voice. Breathless. Saying, "You always know how to make me forget him." That was it. I stared at the screen for a long time, my jaw locked so tight it hurt. My chest felt like it was caving in, but I didn't cry. I couldn't. Something in me had gone completely silent. Like grief had walked in and closed the door behind it. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. Made her eggs the way she liked them. Kissed her neck when she passed. Asked about her plans. Because now it wasn't about catching her. I already had. Now it was about what I'd do with it. And beneath all the heartache, something new started growing, not rage, not yet. Just a cold, aching need to expose the truth. Not for her. Not for Adrian. But for me, so I could finally stop being the only one suffocating in silence. I started waking up before her. Not because I couldn't sleep, that had stopped days ago, but because I needed time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to breathe before the mask went on again. She had no idea what I knew. And that gave me power I never asked for, but now refused to give up. I kept thinking about the video. Her voice, so casual in its betrayal. You always know how to make me forget him. I replayed it in my mind constantly, even though it made my stomach turn. Because those words weren't just proof of infidelity, they were erasure. Like I was a smudge she wiped away in someone else's bed. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, her sister. Maya. We were never close. Lena always kept her at arm's length, called her judgy and too nosy. But I remembered Maya from birthdays and barbecues. Quiet, sharp-eyed, a little too observant. I sent a message. Simple. Hey. Sorry for the random text. Just wondering if we could talk, something private. She responded in less than a minute. We met at a little bakery near her job. She looked different, older, worn down a bit, but still had that same skeptical way of scanning you like she was waiting for a lie. I didn't waste time. I told her everything. About the texts, the photos, the video. I even showed her the folder, the zip file, the messages. Her face didn't change much. But when I finished, she said something that made my skin crawl. I was wondering when this would happen. I stared at her. What do you mean? She sipped her coffee, eyes dark. Lena's done this before. Apparently, I wasn't the first Daniel. Not even close. Maya told me about 2 other men. One in college. One right before me. Same pattern, emotional intensity, whirlwind romance, then a slow unraveling when Lena grew restless. Always another man. Always the thrill of duplicity. She doesn't cheat for sex, Maya said. She cheats for control. Validation. When she starts feeling invisible, she makes someone else worship her. Then she leaves the wreckage behind like it's not even hers. I didn't know what to say. I felt sick. Not just because of Lena, but because I had seen the signs. I just hadn't wanted to believe them. I asked Maya one last thing. Do you know who Adrian is? That was the first time she looked away. No, she said too quickly. Then softer, but I know she never deletes her past. She hoards it. That night, I went back to the old laptop. I opened her photo app, typed in a few keywords, tried old email folders, cross-referenced calendar entries. It was like assembling a puzzle with missing pieces, until I found an invoice. A weekend stay at a lake house. 2 guests. 2 bottles of wine. And a reservation made under his name. Adrian Malone. A quick search pulled up his LinkedIn. A writer. Independent, romantic-looking, older than me. Based in a nearby city. They'd connected during a freelance event over a year ago. That's when it must have started. I sat back, my mind racing. I had enough now. Not just proof, but pattern. A story I could hold in my hands. And in that moment, I knew how I wanted to expose her. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I'd let her tell the truth herself, with her own words, her own voice. All I had to do was listen a little longer, and set the stage. It started small. Little moments. Calculated silences. Questions that sounded harmless but landed sharp. I wasn't trying to hurt her, not yet. I just wanted her to feel it, that quiet, creeping sense that something was off. That someone was watching. Because I was watching. Every word. Every look. Every micro shift in tone. She was still playing the role, girlfriend, roommate, lover. But now, I could see the edges fraying. She started checking her phone in secret again. She'd go to the bathroom during dinner and take 20 minutes to return. She'd answer questions too fast, laugh a little too loudly, apologize when I hadn't even said anything was wrong. Guilt was slipping through the cracks in her skin. And I fed it. I told her I loved her more. I made her favorite meals. I started planning a fake weekend getaway, something romantic, sentimental. I even suggested revisiting the lake house from last year, just to watch her flinch. She covered it well. But not perfectly. I knew the exact moment she realized I knew something. It was a Thursday night. She came home late, hair still damp from a friend's house. I was waiting in the living room, scrolling through my phone. Calm. Controlled. I looked up and said, "Hey, who's Adrienne Malone?" Her breath caught, I saw it. The smallest flicker. Not panic. Something worse, calculation. She smiled, slow and practiced. "Why do you ask?" I shrugged. "Saw his name on an old email while organizing stuff on your laptop." She walked over, kissed my temple, too soft. "Oh. Just someone I met through work stuff. Ages ago." "Why?" I smiled back. "Just curious." And that was it. No accusations. No fight. But I saw the terror behind her eyes. She knew I knew. She just didn't know how much. That weekend, I told her I'd be out of town visiting an old friend. I packed a bag, left the apartment, then circled back an hour later and parked 2 streets over. I wanted to see what she'd do with the empty space. Sure enough, within an hour, she left. Not in a panic. Calm. Confident. She even wore makeup, not much, just enough. She got in an Uber. I followed, heart slamming against my ribs the whole drive. I didn't know what I was going to find. I just knew I needed to see it. She didn't go to a hotel. She went to a house. Not fancy. Not trashy. Just private. She rang the bell. A man opened the door. Tall. Gray at the temples. They didn't kiss, but the way he looked at her, it was like he'd been starving. I didn't take pictures. Not then. I didn't need to anymore. The truth wasn't hiding. When she came home hours later, I was already there. Sitting in the dark, drinking one of her expensive wines she said was just for special nights. She jumped when she saw me. "Jesus, Daniel. I thought you were out of town." I looked at her. Really looked. And I said, "I know." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then sat down across from me and whispered, "How long?" I took a sip of the wine. "Long enough." She nodded. Just nodded. No fight. No denial. Because even she knew, the performance was over. But mine? Mine was just getting started. She didn't cry. That was the first thing I noticed. She didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't throw herself into some desperate apology. She just sat there on the edge of the couch, hands folded tight in her lap, staring at the wineglass like it might save her. I waited. Just watched. Eventually, she broke the silence. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, voice low, like we were in a church or a hospital. I didn't respond. I let her keep talking, because that's the thing with guilt. If you leave it alone long enough, it spills on its own. "He was just easy," she continued. "No expectations. No pressure. He didn't know me like you do. That part stung more than I expected. I still said nothing. She looked at me then, finally. Her eyes were red but dry. You were always good to me. I don't know. I felt like I was disappearing. I wanted to laugh. Disappearing? I'd built my entire world around her. I'd shrunk myself down to fit every corner of her moods, every silence, every unsaid thing. But instead of arguing, I just said, "Why him?" And she hesitated. Because he reminded me who I used to be. Before all this. All this. Like we were just clutter. A mistake. A phase. My throat tightened, but I pushed past it. And what exactly were you planning to do? Keep both of us? Trade one in when you got bored? She shook her head, but slowly. Like she wasn't sure anymore. I thought about leaving. So many times. But then you'd do something, make dinner, kiss my shoulder, ask me how I'm really doing, and I'd feel like a monster. She was trying to sound human. Like she was bleeding, too. But I wasn't looking for that anymore. I was watching her confess not for clarity, but for leverage. I finally stood up, poured the rest of the wine into the sink. I turned and said, "You don't have to leave tonight. But you will." That got her. She stood too fast. So that's it? You're just done? I met her eyes. You ended it. I'm just the last to get the memo. She started pacing. Her voice rose a little, frantic now. I never stopped loving you, Daniel. I just got lost. That's not a crime. No, I said. But lying is. And dragging me into your guilt while pretending everything was okay? That's cruelty dressed up as confusion. Her face crumpled for a second. Then she walked to the bedroom and slammed the door. I didn't follow. I sat there in the silence, finally breathing without clenching my jaw. I could feel my hands again. My chest wasn't tight for the first time in weeks. But I wasn't done. The truth was only half the revenge. What I had planned next would make sure she never used someone like that again. I waited until she went to work the next morning. She barely looked at me when she left. No kiss, no "have a good day." Just a muttered "bye" and the sound of her boots clacking down the hall. I sat at the kitchen table long after the door closed, letting the quiet settle like dust. Then I opened my laptop. I wasn't going to scream online or blast her on social media. That's not how she operated, and that's not how I wanted to end this. Lena thrived on image, on control, on being the one who left first. She told stories about her exes with casual cruelty, always making herself the misunderstood one. The broken one. The one who tried. So I started collecting her stories. Emails. Notes she'd left around the house. Photos I'd taken that she never realized caught more than just a smile. And, of course, the video, that one sentence of hers that still echoed in my skull like a bruise that wouldn't fade. "You always know how to make me forget him." I didn't send it anywhere. Not yet. First, I called Maya. She answered on the first ring. Did she confess? Enough, I said. There was a pause, then she said, "So what now?" "I need you to help me with something. Something big." She agreed without asking what. That surprised me. But later she told me, she'd been waiting for years to see Lena held accountable for the way she destroyed people without ever looking back. We met that night. At Maya's apartment. We built a digital journal, a private, encrypted page filled with moments. Lena's real timeline. Her emotional wreckage. The way she crafted love like a trap and walked away before the damage became her responsibility. It wasn't a smear campaign. It was a mirror. Then came the key, a scheduled email. One that would go to Lena, to Adrian, and to one more person she never expected, her boss. Because she had lied at work too. About travel. About weekends. About who was sick and who needed care. She used me as an excuse to skip meetings. Said I was in recovery. Said I had surgery. Used me like a prop. I attached receipts. Screenshots. A calendar log. Photos of the hotel where she'd claimed to be at a client conference. The truth was elegant. I didn't add cruelty. I didn't twist her words. I just let her words burn. The night before the email was set to go out, she came home early. She looked exhausted. Sat across from me and said, "Can we talk?" I nodded. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't close the space either. I've been thinking a lot. About us. About everything. I stayed silent. I don't want to lose what we had. I know I broke things. But I want to fix it. There was a tremble in her voice. Real, maybe. But it was too late. Because in less than 12 hours, the truth would arrive in 3 inboxes. And for the first time in her life, Lena would have to own what she did, without hiding behind charm, excuses, or crocodile tears. I looked at her and said, "I hope you're ready to tell the truth." She frowned. "What do you mean?" I smiled, just a little. "You'll see." The email was scheduled to send early, sometime that morning, just after she left. I didn't watch the clock. I didn't sit by the laptop, hand trembling over the mouse, second-guessing anything. By then, it wasn't about revenge anymore, not really. It was about restoration. About balance. About leveling the weight she never realized she had dropped onto everyone she touched. She woke late, dragging her feet like she'd spent the night wrestling with something nameless. No makeup. Hair unbrushed. She looked human. For once, the curated edges were gone. I made coffee anyway. Poured it into her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle, and set it on the counter like I'd always done. She didn't say thank you. She barely noticed me. Then her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then 5 times in a row. She frowned, picked it up, and I watched the change wash over her face like a slow-moving storm. Her thumb hovered. She opened a message. Then another. Her lips parted, not in surprise, but something more hollow. Dread. Awareness. Her phone started ringing. I knew who it was even before she answered. "Adrian, calm down," she hissed into the phone. "No, I don't know how he, listen, I didn't send him everything, I swear. You need to relax." She paused. Her face twisted, then she hung up. And turned to me. "What did you do?" she asked, like the world was suddenly on fire. I just looked at her. Calm. Still. "I didn't do anything but show the truth," I said. "Your words. Your choices." She stared at me. Then her phone buzzed again. Another email. This one she didn't open aloud. I watched her eyes move across the screen. Her jaw went slack. Her hands started trembling. It was the message from her boss. I knew because she let the phone fall slowly onto the table like it had stung her. "Pending review," she whispered. "Integrity concerns, external misconduct, indefinite suspension." She couldn't finish. For the first time, Lena looked breakable. She sat down, hard. Her shoulders hunched, like the weight finally caught up with her. She didn't speak for a long time. Just stared. Finally, she looked at me. "Why didn't you just leave, Daniel? You could have walked away. You didn't have to destroy everything." I took a deep breath. Because people always leave you, don't they? And every time they do, you make them the villain. You tell your sad little version of the story and move on like none of it was your fault. She flinched. That landed. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "But you did. Repeatedly. You just convinced yourself it was survival." She didn't deny it. She just broke. Not with sobs, that would have made it easier. She just crumbled into herself. Mouth trembling, hands curled into fists, eyes glassy but dry. Like all the guilt finally caught up and didn't know how to leave her body. I watched her for a moment longer. And for the first time, I didn't feel rage. Or victory. Or even relief. I felt grief. Because no matter how far I'd gone to expose the truth, there was no version of this where I came out clean either. She didn't speak to me for the rest of that day. At first, it felt like peace. The apartment had been filled with too many words, too many deflections and fake smiles, for too long. Now there was just silence. Heavy, real, almost sacred. But as the hours dragged on, the silence stopped feeling like clarity. It started to feel like decay. I found her curled up in the far corner of the bedroom that night. Not asleep, just folded in. Knees to her chest, face buried in a pillow, like she was trying to shrink into nothing. She didn't look up when I walked in. I didn't say anything either. Just stood there, watching the shadow she had become. You'd think I'd feel powerful in that moment, seeing her finally brought low. But I didn't. Not really. I felt hollow. She whispered something. Barely audible. I leaned in to hear. I didn't mean to be cruel. It hit harder than I expected. Not because I believed her, I didn't, but because for once, it didn't sound like a line. There was no defense in her voice. No spin. Just naked regret. Still, I had to ask. Then why did you keep lying, Lena? She turned her face toward me, eyes red. Because the truth meant I'd lose both of you. You had already lost me, I said. You just didn't want to admit it. She sat up slowly, like moving hurt. I didn't want to be the bad guy again. I let out a bitter laugh. You don't get to decide that. That's not how this works. She didn't argue. She just looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite place, like she was seeing something she hadn't before. Not just guilt. Not even shame. Something deeper. Fear, maybe. Of herself. I left the room. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the balcony most of the night, listening to the city breathe below me. Thinking about the version of me from just a few months ago, the one who thought love was enough. Who thought being solid and good would protect him from the kind of person Lena was slowly becoming. I wanted to hate her. But I couldn't untangle her from the girl who used to fall asleep with her hand on my chest. Who cried in my arms when she got bad news. Who once spent an entire afternoon helping me repaint our hallway, laughing every time we messed up the corners. She wasn't just a villain. She was a wound. One that didn't know how to heal, so it bled on anyone who tried to get close. The next morning, she was gone. Her keys were on the table. Her drawers were empty. No note. And I didn't chase her. Because there was nothing left to say. But even then, as I stood in the doorway of the life we built together, I knew this wasn't the end. Not really. You don't just bury someone like Lena. She lives in the echoes, in the hesitation before trusting someone new, in the questions you ask yourself at 2 a.m., in the part of you that wonders if it was ever real. I thought it would feel cleaner. After she left, I packed up her things. What was left, anyway? A sweater tangled in the laundry, a half-used bottle of conditioner in the shower, one of her rings on the nightstand, the cheap one she wore when she didn't want to be noticed. I put it all in a box and left it by the door. No dramatic burning. No final goodbye text. Just distance. For a few days, it worked. The quiet became manageable. I went to work, answered emails, ate alone in the kitchen without hearing her laugh echo off the tiles. It hurt, yeah. But it was manageable. Like a bruise, deep, but fading. But grief has a way of sneaking back in sideways. I was sorting through some drawers, trying to finally declutter the mess we'd ignored for years, when I found something I hadn't seen in months. A small notebook. Black cover. Soft edges. I almost tossed it without opening it. But her handwriting stopped me. Inside were pages of fragmented thoughts, scribbled lines, song lyrics, bits of poetry. At first, it looked like Lena's usual brain dump, chaotic, romantic, abstract. But then I saw something strange. A name. Repeated. Noah. And under it, a sentence, "I'm sorry I left you there." I didn't know how else to survive. I sat down on the edge of the bed, flipping through the pages faster now. That name kept coming up. Different contexts. Phrases like, "the accident, they said it wasn't my fault," and, "he would have been 5 this year." I didn't know who Noah was. But something in my chest tightened like a warning. Lena had never mentioned a child. Never hinted at a past like that. We'd talked about kids once or twice. She always said she wasn't ready. That it was complicated. I thought she meant emotionally. I never imagined it was literal. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was fiction. A writing exercise. A metaphor. But something in the way she wrote it, raw, unfinished, scratched out and rewritten, felt too real to ignore. I took the notebook to Maya. She read the first few pages and closed it immediately. Her face went pale. "Maya," I said carefully. "Who's Noah?" She looked down at her lap. Her hands clenched. And for the first time since all of this began, she looked afraid. "You weren't supposed to find that," she whispered. "Lena, she never told anyone the full story. Not even me." "But there is a story," I pressed. Maya nodded slowly. "Yeah. There is. And if it's what I think it is, it changes everything." I felt the floor tilt slightly beneath me. Because I'd built my revenge on the assumption that I knew who Lena was, a liar, a manipulator, someone who used affection as a currency. But if there was a wound buried beneath all of that, a real one. I wasn't just the executioner anymore. I might have become her next trauma. I wasn't ready to feel sorry for her. Not after everything. Not after the texts, the lies, the way she turned my love into a disguise she wore while living a second life behind my back. But after reading that notebook, and seeing Maya's face when I asked about Noah, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know Lena at all. Maya didn't tell me much that night. Just that there had been an incident years before we met. Something involving Lena and a family she stayed with when she was younger, an older man, a child, and a truth that never made it into daylight. She buried it, Maya said, voice flat. And when she came home, she wasn't the same. That's when the manipulation started. The control. She didn't trust love anymore, not from anyone. Not even me. I left Maya's place in a fog. The next day, I did something I swore I never would. I reached out to Lena. She answered my text almost immediately. We met in a park. Neutral ground. She wore sunglasses even though it was overcast. Sat down on a bench like she didn't know how to hold her own body anymore. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then I asked her, who was Noah? Her hands started trembling. She took off her sunglasses. I saw it then, the real her. No makeup. No defense. Just something shattered beneath her skin. You shouldn't have found that notebook, she whispered. Maybe not. But I did. And now I need to know. She stared at the gravel path in front of us. Picked at her thumbnail. When she spoke, her voice cracked. He was my son. My entire body went still. She continued slowly, like every word was pulling her under. It wasn't like some teen pregnancy thing. I was living with this man, older, controlling, said he'd help me get on my feet. He was the father. I didn't want it, but I convinced myself it was a second chance. She swallowed hard. Noah was born early. Sick. He lasted 2 weeks. I couldn't move. Couldn't think. And I left, she said. I didn't stay for the funeral. I didn't talk to anyone. I just left. And I never looked back. Silence settled between us like fog. I wasn't strong enough to grieve him, she said. So I turned myself into someone who didn't have to. I buried him by becoming someone no one could really touch. No one who could hurt me. That's when it clicked. She wasn't cheating on me to replace me. She was cheating to protect herself. To stay one step ahead of the part of her that believed love equals loss. And in destroying her life, I hadn't exposed some casual liar. I'd cracked open someone who was still bleeding. I stood up. I didn't know, I said quietly. She nodded. No one does. I started to walk away. She didn't follow. But her voice reached me one last time. I never meant to ruin you, Daniel. I just didn't know how to let someone stay. And for the first time, I believed her. But belief didn't undo the damage. It just made it harder to carry. I didn't speak to anyone for 2 days after that. I thought maybe I'd feel some kind of peace, like finally knowing the truth would settle the storm. But it didn't. It just shifted it. The anger that used to keep me upright now felt irrelevant. Like yelling at a ghost. I kept replaying her words in my head. I never meant to ruin you. I didn't know how to let someone stay. It haunted me, not because it excused anything, but because it was true. Lena had betrayed me. Lied. Manipulated. But she didn't do it for sport. She did it because she didn't know how else to survive. And maybe that was worse. I found myself walking the apartment at night like I was searching for something. I'd stop in front of the closet where she used to keep her scarves. Open it. Stare at the empty hangers. I'd stand in the kitchen and remember her humming while making tea, or leaning against the counter barefoot and tired after work. She was gone. But she wasn't. Not really. The notebook sat on my desk, unopened since the park. At one point, I reached for it, fingers hovering over the cover, then pulled back like it was on fire. Some wounds don't want to be read twice. The messages I sent, to Adrian, to her boss, to everyone, they didn't haunt me the way I thought they would. But they didn't satisfy me either. I kept waiting for the feeling that it was all worth it. That I'd won. It never came. Instead, I started seeing myself differently. Not as the wronged man seeking justice, but as a man who turned pain into strategy. Who weaponized truth because he could. Who forgot that broken people don't need more punishment, they need space to either heal or self-destruct on their own. And yet, I wasn't ready to let it go entirely. One evening, Maya called. I hadn't spoken to her since the day of the reveal. She asked how I was holding up. I lied, said I was okay. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. Lena's moved back in with our parents. She's not talking to anyone. But, she's getting help. I didn't say anything at first. She showed them the notebook, Maya added. Told them everything. Even about Noah. My breath caught in my throat. She's not trying to blame you, Maya said quietly. She's just facing it. Finally. I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to ask how she was doing. Part of me wanted to scream that it didn't change what she did to me. But mostly, I just sat there staring at the wall, realizing that this story, the one I thought was mine, had never really belonged to me alone. I said goodbye to Maya and hung up. Then I did something unexpected. I pulled out a fresh page of the notebook. One she hadn't filled. And I started to write. Not to her. Not to Adrian. Not to Maya. To Noah. Because if I was going to carry this pain, I wanted to speak to the part of her that couldn't. I didn't know how to start. The blank page felt heavier than it should have. Just paper. Just ink. But my hand hovered for a long time, pen uncapped, heart beating harder than it did when I exposed her. Finally, I wrote. To the child I never knew, but now can't forget. It felt strange, writing to someone who was gone, someone who wasn't mine, whose life lasted only long enough to scar the woman who broke me. But this wasn't about him. Not really. It was about everything she buried to become the person I knew. The person who destroyed me. I filled the page slowly. I told him who I was. Who she was, to me. Not the curated version. Not the liar. The real one. The way she used to trace circles on my back when I couldn't sleep. The way she used to hum in the shower, like life wasn't heavy at all. The way she'd cry during sad movies but pretend her eyes were just sensitive. I told him I hated her. Then missed her. Then hated that I missed her. I didn't know if it was forgiveness. Probably not. But it was honest. And for the first time since she left, I slept. The next morning, I left the notebook at the edge of the mailbox outside Maya's apartment. No note. No instructions. Just a quiet handoff. Whatever happened next, that wasn't mine to control. I started walking more. Eating better. I let myself feel things that weren't wrapped in pain. I didn't rush it. Healing didn't feel like progress. It felt like letting dust settle. And then, weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name on the envelope, written in her handwriting. Inside were 3 sentences. Thank you for writing to him. I never could. You didn't ruin me. You just stopped hiding from the truth. I'm still learning how to be a person. You showed me what I'd forgotten. There was no signature. No plea to come back. Just that. And it was enough. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Not to revisit. Just to keep. Because sometimes, the hardest part of healing is accepting that some wounds don't close, they just stop bleeding. I didn't need revenge anymore. I just needed to remember that even wreckage can leave room for something else. There was no grand turning point. No montage of recovery. No sudden sunrise where everything clicked back into place. Healing, it turned out, was just repetition, breathing through the same ache until it softened around the edges. I got used to the quiet. Used to the way the apartment sounded without her humming in the kitchen, or kicking her shoes off in the hallway. I stopped flinching when I heard keys in the lock. No one else had a copy now. I even started changing things. I repainted the living room. Gave away the couch we bought together. Rearranged the bookshelf just so it wouldn't look like she still lived in my choices. But there were things I couldn't change. Like the drawer where I kept her letter. Or the part of me that still sometimes thought about what she might be doing at that exact moment, if she'd started laughing again. If someone else was helping her feel real. I didn't check. I could have, easily. But I didn't. Not because I didn't care. But because caring no longer gave me the right. Sometimes, I'd pass couples on the street and wonder what version of ourselves they reminded me of. Not the fake smiles near the end, no, the beginning. The hand-holding. The way we used to sit on the same side of the booth. The version of us that felt like magic before it started to rot. It still haunted me, how close we were to something beautiful. And how far it all fell. One night, I ran into Adrian. It was accidental, a bookstore, of all places. I recognized him instantly. Older. Still too polished. He looked at me, then away, pretending not to. I didn't say anything. But I watched him pick up a book on forgiveness, read the back, and quietly put it down again. And for some reason, that hit harder than anything he ever did. Because maybe we were all just haunted. Not just by what we lost, but by the parts of ourselves we gave away in the process. That night, I walked home and wrote one more letter. Not to her. Not to him. Not even to Noah. To myself. Just a few words. You didn't deserve what happened. But you didn't become a monster either. You walked away. And I folded that one, too. placed it beside hers. Not out of nostalgia. Not out of hope. But because the person I'd become deserved to be remembered, too. I used to think closure came with answers. That if I just knew why she did it, or how long, or who started it, I could let it go. I thought truth would feel like a clean break, final, sharp, done. But that's not what truth feels like. It feels like sitting in a room full of familiar things and realizing none of them know your name anymore. It feels like silence after a storm, and still bracing for thunder that never comes. Months passed. I changed jobs. Moved apartments. Got rid of the furniture that still smelled like her shampoo. People started asking if I was seeing anyone. I smiled, said I wasn't ready. That was true. But not the full truth. Because the truth is, after someone like Lena, you don't look for love right away. You look for pieces of yourself. The ones you traded for approval. The ones you lost while trying to hold someone who was already slipping through you like water. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks of me. Not in a yearning way. Just, in that strange, human way we remember the people who once saw us naked, emotionally, spiritually. People who knew the parts of us we didn't show anyone else. I don't know if she got better. I don't know if she ever stopped rewriting the past to make herself the survivor. But I do know she broke something inside me. And that I forgave her anyway. Not for her. For me. Because carrying that weight, the bitterness, the need for punishment, it started to cost me more than she ever did. It turned me into someone I didn't recognize. Someone calculating. Quietly cruel. Vengeful in ways I never imagined I could be. And maybe that's the final betrayal, not what they did, but what we become because of it. I used to want her to suffer. Now, I just want her to feel safe enough to never hurt someone the way she hurt me. That's all. And as for me, I'll be okay. Not whole. Not healed. But awake. And if you've ever been betrayed like that, if you're sitting in the aftermath, choking on questions, trying to build meaning out of what feels like rubble, I want you to hear this. You're not weak for loving them. You're not stupid for trusting. You're not broken because they left a scar. You're just human. And you survived. That matters more than they'll ever know.